Somewhere in your grandmother's closet, or maybe in a dusty corner of an estate sale, there is a sewing machine that is older than the interstate highway system, and it still sews a perfect straight stitch. Meanwhile, the machine you bought 2 Christmases ago is already skipping stitches, jamming on the bobbin, and making a noise that sounds like it's asking for help. What happened? Here's the uncomfortable truth the sewing machine industry doesn't put on the box. Most of the brand names you grew up trusting are not the same companies anymore. They got bought, merged, outsourced, and quietly hollowed out, while the logo on the front stayed exactly the same. So when you walk into a big box store and see a trusted name for $150, you might actually be buying a completely different supply chain than the one that earned that trust in the first place. But, and this is important, it is not all bad news. A handful of brands have either protected their manufacturing, kept their engineering standards intact, or built such a solid reputation with home sewists, quilters, and small business owners that they have genuinely earned the label, "Buy it for life." Today, we're breaking down the 8 sewing machine brands that still deserve your trust in 2026, why the others lost it, and exactly which models to look for if you want a machine that will outlive your sewing hobby, your kids' sewing hobby, and possibly your house. Grab your coffee, keep your seam ripper close, because this one's going to save you a lot of money and a lot of heartbreak. Let's get into it. Why so many trusted brands aren't trustworthy anymore. Before we get to the good list, we need 15 minutes on the bad news, because you need this context to understand why the 8 brands on today's list actually matter. Here's the thing about the sewing machine industry that nobody tells beginners. 3 of the most recognizable names on the market, Singer, Pfaff, and Husqvarna Viking, are all owned by the exact same parent company. It's called SVP Worldwide, headquartered out of Nashville, Tennessee, and currently controlled by the private equity firm Platinum Equity, which took over the controlling stake back in 2021. SVP Worldwide is enormous. This single company is responsible for roughly 1 out of every 3 sewing machines sold anywhere in the world. 3 separate brand identities, 1 corporate parent, and increasingly, shared factories and shared parts bins. That alone isn't automatically a red flag. Plenty of companies own multiple brands successfully. The problem is what happened to production. Singer, once the gold standard of American manufacturing, actually filed for bankruptcy protection back in the late 90s, and the sewing machine division has been sold and restructured multiple times since. Today, if you flip over a lot of current Singer machines, you'll find "Made in Vietnam" stamped on the base, not Elizabethport, New Jersey, where the legendary machines like the Featherweight were built. Production for the big 3 SVP brands is now spread across factories in Vietnam, China, and Brazil, with only a handful of premium models still tracing back to more controlled manufacturing. And the complaints follow the outsourcing. Customer review sites are packed with stories, machines arriving defective, tension systems that never quite hold, customer service that's nearly impossible to reach, and warranty claims that go nowhere. That doesn't mean every single Singer, Pfaff, or Viking machine sold today is garbage. It means the brand name alone no longer guarantees the build quality it used to. You have to know exactly which model and exactly which factory you're getting. Contrast that with the brands still on today's list. What they share is one of 3 things. They still manufacture in-house with real quality control. They've built a reputation specifically on being reparable and mechanically simple. Or they're vintage machines from an era when planned obsolescence wasn't part of the business model. Keep that filter in mind as we go through the list, because it's the same filter you should be using the next time you're shopping. Number 8, Juki, the industrial bloodline. We're starting with Juki because it's probably the least glamorous name on this list, and also one of the most quietly respected among serious sewists, tailors, and small clothing businesses. Juki is a Japanese company, and its real reputation was built in factories, not living rooms. It is one of the world's leading manufacturers of industrial sewing machines, the kind used on garment production lines to punch out thousands of stitches per minute for hours on end without complaint. That industrial DNA is the entire reason Juki earns a spot here. When Juki brings that engineering down into home sewing machines, like the long-running TL platform, You get a machine that behaves less like a hobby appliance and more like a scaled-down factory tool. Take the Juki TL 2010Q. It's a straight-stitch-only machine, meaning no fancy zigzag or decorative stitches, but what it does at an incredibly high level. It's capable of sewing around 1,500 stitches per minute, which is dramatically faster than most consumer machines, while staying quiet and low vibration. For comparison, a lot of computerized home machines top out well under half that speed. Quilters in particular love this machine because piecing quilt tops is basically thousands of straight stitches, and the TL just eats through that work hour after hour. On the true industrial side, machines like the Juki DNU 1541 are built with heavy cast frames, DC servo motors, and safety mechanisms that instantly stop the needle if it hits an obstruction. Features you'd expect on serious commercial equipment, not a hobby machine. That's the standard Juki holds itself to across the board. Price-wise, Juki spans a huge range. Entry semi-industrial machines start around $600 to $800, while the TL 2010Q lands in the $800 to $1,000 range, and true industrial tabletop units can run well past $2,000 once you add the table and motor setup. It's not a beginner's first machine, and it's not trying to be. It's the machine you graduate to when you're doing serious volume, and it's the machine repair shops describe as almost impossible to wear out with normal use. Number 7. Bernina Swiss Precision, with one caveat. If you've spent any real time in quilting circles, you already know the reaction the word Bernina gets. People talk about their Bernina the way car people talk about a German sports sedan. There's a hushed respect, and usually a story about how long they've owned it. Bernina International was founded in Switzerland back in 1893, and the brand has spent well over a century building a reputation around all-metal internal components, an incredibly smooth and famous hook system, and stitch quality that dedicated sewists describe as simply flawless. The company remains privately owned, still headquartered in Steckborn, Switzerland, and their flagship 8 Series machines and long-arm quilting systems are still manufactured there under direct Swiss oversight. Here's the caveat, and it's worth knowing before you spend the money. Bernina's more accessible 3, 4, 5, and 7 Series machines, which cover most of what home sewists actually buy, are manufactured in Bernina's own dedicated factory in Thailand, under what the company describes as strict Swiss supervision and quality standards. That's not a red flag like the outsourcing we talked about with SVP Worldwide. Bernina owns and runs that factory directly, using the same engineering specs and metal frame construction philosophy across every price point. It's simply worth knowing that Swiss-made and Swiss-engineered aren't always the same label on every single model. What actually justifies the price tag, and Bernina prices range from around $1,500 for entry Bernette models, which is Bernina's budget sub-brand, all the way past $10,000 for the flagship 8 Series, is the internals. Metal gear trains instead of plastic, adaptive tension systems that adjust automatically as fabric thickness changes, and a hook mechanism so precise that quilters specifically buy Bernina machines just for that stitch regulator feature, which keeps stitch length perfectly even when you're moving fabric by hand under the needle. These machines also hold their resale value remarkably well, which tells you something about how buyers feel about long-term reliability. Number 6. Janome, the most underrated name in the room. If Bernina is the brand everyone talks about, Janome is the brand that quietly does the same job for a lot less money and somehow doesn't get nearly enough credit for it. Janome is Japan's oldest sewing machine manufacturer, tracing back to 1921 when it started as the Pine Sewing Machine Factory in Tokyo. Over the past century, it's grown into one of the largest sewing machine companies on Earth, producing well over 75 million machines. What makes Janome different from a lot of competitors is that they manufacture almost everything themselves in their own factories in Japan, Taiwan, and Thailand, rather than farming production out to third-party contractors. Their flagship Horizon and Skyline lines are built at their main Japanese facility, while the mid-range and budget lines come from their Taiwan and Thailand plants, still under Janome's own roof and quality control. The reputation here isn't flashy, it's earned. Ask a repair shop technician which machines they see the least of on their bench, and Janome comes up constantly. The build quality holds up to years of heavy use, the tension systems are famously easy to dial in correctly, and even their budget models, like the long-running Janome 2212, have a cult following for being nearly indestructible mechanical workhorses. Prices are genuinely reasonable for what you get. You can find a solid mechanical Janome for $200 to $300, mid-range computerized quilting machines in the $600 to $1,200 range, and their top Horizon and Continental M-Series machines climbing toward $3,000 or $4,000 for serious quilters and garment makers who need speed and precision. Janome also owns the Swiss brand Elna, which we'll get to in a moment, so if you like what Janome does mechanically, you're actually seeing that same engineering show up under two different logos. Number 5. Brother, reliable, accessible, and built for the long haul. Brother is probably the name most of you already own, and there's a very good reason this Japanese company keeps landing at the top of bestseller lists year after year. They've figured out how to make dependable machines at genuinely accessible prices, and they back it up with one of the strongest warranties in the industry. Brother Industries has been building sewing machines since the 1930s, growing out of a sewing machine repair shop in Nagoya, Japan. Today, they're a massive global electronics company, but the sewing division has stayed remarkably consistent in one specific way. They build machines for people who are just starting out and need something that won't fight them. And they do it without cutting corners on the internal mechanics that actually matter. The Brother CS6000 has quietly sat near the top of bestseller charts for over a decade, and it's not because of marketing. It's because it does exactly what a beginner and intermediate Swiss needs without drama: a reliable drop-in bobbin system that resists jamming, 60 stitches, and a price tag usually under $200. Step up to something like the CS7000X or the newer CS7205, and you're getting a wider stitch selection, an included extension table, and the kind of smooth, consistent operation that's earned Brother a reputation as the safe bet among sewing content creators and review sites alike. Many Brother home machines come with a genuinely impressive 25-year limited warranty, which is a strong signal of how confident the company is in its own hardware. On the higher end, Brother's combination sewing and embroidery machines, like the SE2000 or the P900, run from about $500 to over $1,000. And their premium Stellar embroidery machines push into the multiple thousands of dollars range for serious small business owners. The honest verdict, echoed across independent testers: if price efficiency and long-term reliability without fuss is what you're after, Brother is very hard to beat. Number 4. Baby Lock, the premium secret built by Brother. Here's a fact that surprises a lot of Swiss the first time they hear it. Baby Lock machines are actually manufactured by Brother Industries in Japan. Baby Lock itself is a brand owned by Takoni Corporation, a privately held, family-run American company that's been in the sewing business since 1946, when founder Nick Takoni started selling used machines and parts out of his own basement. The Baby Lock name became legendary in 1968 when Japanese engineer Koichi Sakuma invented the household serger, a completely new category of machine that let home sewists finish seams the way factories did. Takoni brought that innovation to the American market, and Baby Lock has been the dominant name in home sergers ever since. Some of their higher-end serger and cover stitch machines are reportedly built on Juki's industrial platforms as well, which tells you something about the caliber of engineering Baby Lock insists on for its flagship products. What separates Baby Lock from a budget machine isn't marketing language, it's measurable. Independent testing has found their machines using die-cast aluminum chassis construction that resists the rattling and loosening that cheaper plastic-bodied machines develop after a few years of regular use, along with thread failure rates and seam strength numbers that consistently beat mass-market competitors. Across major review platforms, Baby Lock consistently holds ratings above 4.6 stars, with the vast majority of owners saying they'd recommend the brand to a friend. The trade-off is price. Baby Lock sits firmly in premium territory. with popular models like the Babylock Aventura or Solaris starting around $1,500 and climbing well past $4,000 for their flagship embroidery combination machines like the Babylock Destiny. It's the brand serious quilters and small sewing businesses graduate to once they know exactly what they need and are ready to invest in something that will handle daily heavy use for a decade or more without complaint. Number 3. Elna, Swiss engineering hiding in plain sight. Elna is a name that doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it deserves, and part of that is because most people don't realize the brand is now owned by Janome, which acquired the historic Swiss company as a subsidiary. That ownership actually works in Elna's favor. You get genuine Swiss-inspired precision engineering, tight, consistent tension systems, and clean stitch quality, backed by Janome's manufacturing muscle and quality control, at prices that are noticeably friendlier than a full-price Bernina. Elna deliberately focuses on the features Swiss actually reach for regularly, rather than piling on every conceivable gimmick, which keeps both the learning curve and the price tag reasonable. Owners consistently describe Elna machines as running quietly for years with nothing more than basic maintenance, and dealer support remains solid, with parts still available even for older models, something that becomes a real problem with a lot of discontinued budget brands. If you want a taste of that old-world European engineering approach without spending four figures, Elna is the brand worth putting on your shortlist, typically landing in the $300 to $800 range for their sewing lineup. Number 2. Vintage all-metal Singers, the original buy-it-for-life machine. This entry is a little different from the rest because we're not talking about a current product line, we're talking about a specific era of manufacturing that genuinely deserves the title, Buy It for Life. And it happens to wear the same logo that we spent so much time warning you about earlier. Before Singer became the outsourced, bankrupt series-structured company it is today, it built some of the most mechanically bulletproof machines ever made. The most famous example is the Singer Featherweight, Model 221, produced from 1933 all the way through 1968 with almost no major design changes, which itself tells you how right they got it the first time. Over 1.5 million of these were made, mostly at the Elizabethport, New Jersey plant, and a huge number of them are still sewing perfect stitches today, nearly a century later, often after nothing more than regular oiling and basic cleaning. The Featherweight isn't the only star of this era. Models like the Singer 15-91 and the Singer 201, built with all-metal gears and a vertical rotary hook, have the same reputation among vintage machine collectors and repair techs, genuinely difficult to kill with normal use. These machines were engineered in a period before planned obsolescence was a business strategy, when a sewing machine was expected to be a multi-decade household investment, sometimes handed down from mother to daughter. The best part is the price. Because these machines are 7, 8, sometimes 9 decades old, they're often shockingly affordable compared to a brand new premium machine. A well-serviced featherweight typically runs between $400 and $800, depending on condition and included accessories, while more common models like the 15-91 can sometimes be found for well under $200 at estate sales, thrift stores, or from dedicated vintage sewing machine dealers. Just know what you're buying. Stick to machines that have been cleaned, oiled, and test-sewn by a seller who actually understands these mechanisms, since a seized or poorly stored vintage machine can need real restoration work before it's usable again. Number 1. The Singer Heavy Duty line, proof that selective trust still works. We're closing the list with an entry that's going to feel like a plot twist after everything we said earlier about modern Singer machines, and that's exactly the point. Remember how we spent an entire section explaining that Singer, as a company, no longer automatically deserves your trust because of outsourced manufacturing and inconsistent quality control? That's still true as a general rule. But there is one specific product line inside the modern Singer catalog that consistently earns praise from independent testers, repair shops, and everyday sewists, the heavy-duty series, led by the Singer 4452 and its siblings like the HD 6380M. These machines use a stainless steel internal frame rather than the mostly plastic construction found in Singer's cheaper models, which immediately solves one of the biggest long-term failure points in budget machines: frame flex that throws off stitch alignment over time. The Singer 4452 sews at around 1100 stitches per minute, powered by a genuinely strong motor that can punch through thick denim and multiple layers of canvas without stalling. Tasks that leave a lot of lighter machines struggling and skipping stitches. It includes 32 built-in stitches, including the stretch stitches you need for knit fabrics, and it's become the go-to recommendation across sewing forums specifically for heavy-duty repair work, upholstery projects, and denim. The lesson here is the whole point of this video. The brand name on the front of the machine tells you far less than it used to. What matters now is the specific model, the specific factory, and the specific engineering choices that went into that one machine. A $170 Singer heavy-duty 4452 with a metal frame can genuinely outsurvive a flashier plastic-bodied computerized machine costing 3 times as much. And that's exactly the kind of research this channel exists to do for you. So there you have it. Juki for pure industrial toughness, Bernina for Swiss-engineered precision, Janome for the most underrated reliability-to-price ratio on the market, Brother for accessible dependability backed by a serious warranty, Babylock for brother-built premium performance, Elna for Swiss character on a budget, vintage all-metal Singers for the original buy-it-for-life legend, and the modern Singer heavy-duty line as proof that even a brand you should generally be cautious about can still produce a genuine winner if you know exactly what to look for. The bigger takeaway is this: don't just trust a logo, trust the specifics. Look at where a machine is actually manufactured, what the frame is made of, whether it's plastic or metal internals, and what real owners are saying after years of use, not just the first week out of the box. That's the difference between a machine that ends up in a landfill in 18 months and one that gets handed down to your kids someday. Which of these 8 is sitting in your sewing room right now? Or better yet, which vintage gem have you rescued from a thrift store that deserves a shout-out? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I might feature your machine in a future video. If this saved you from making an expensive mistake, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more sewists who need this information before they buy. Subscribe if you want more honest, research-backed breakdowns like this one every week, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep your bobbins full and your tension even. Happy sewing!